So first and foremost, so Nicole, in your situation, the thing that I would have say is, how could you have taken steps to put yourself out there, to go get to know people and go share parts of yourself with them so that they knew you a little bit better, right? Now, hindsight is 2020, right? We didn't know that was happening. But this is something that anybody can do with people that they're having conflict, is to say, maybe if I go build a relationship with them, right? Of course, you didn't even know the conflict was happening.
But this is what I feel like got me in trouble. Because I was sharing stuff that I might not normally share. Right. So like, I was trying to be very transparent and very open about the circumstances, the situation, not only with like my home stuff, but just also in general, like, oh man, I'm really getting this. I really like this. Because I had onboarded like 8 or 10 months prior to like all of this. So part of it was also like, wow, I'm finally getting it. Right.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it kind of fell.
You got blindsided.
This is one of the things
that you did.
I think was a downfall.
Okay. Let's talk about it. Well, let's see what we can do.
Yeah.
Right. So second is that the like. So people like people who are like them. And so when we're connecting with people, what we want to do is try to find what are the things that we have in common. Because that is how we feel safety and security. A lot of times we think that we're working with coworkers and we're all talking about business and that brings us closer together. But the truth is we need to go a little bit outside of that. We need to go a little bit outside of our comfort zone. Now, there's danger for going too far outside of the comfort zone, potentially, right? And I don't know your specific situation, and I'm happy to talk more about that. But when we find commonality with people beyond work, that's where that connection really starts to happen. And then think to yourself, did I have a story about the people in this room when I first walked in? And how is my story about them right now? Right? Because in the absence of information, my brain makes up stories to try to help me feel safe in the world. But now that I have a little bit more information, my story shifted. Right? And
I also spent a lot of time trying to think, because you said find out something about them, right?
Yes,
so
that's right.
Instead of me trying to be like, I want to share this with you.
Yeah.
How can I get any information from you?
That's right. And so one downside of this approach is it can turn into like an interview, especially at a networking event. It's like, so where do you live? And what do you do? And where are you going this weekend? And it's like, I need to share as well. So often what I'll do is say, hi, I'm Christopher, what's your name? So I'll share first and then ask, because then I'm being vulnerable first and I'm making it safe for them to know how to be vulnerable back with me. So that's just a trick with this. So know, like, and then we move into trust. And gosh, I could do a whole hour just on trust. Don't really have time, but I'll just say that there are 3 elements of trust: competence, reliability, and sincerity. And we often find that people try to use competence to build trust, to show how much I know and how great I am and all the wonderful things that I can do for my boss. But the truth is, competence is one of the least effective ways of building trust. And so reliability, like, don't just reach out once and expect that suddenly you're going to have a relationship, right? Reaching out again and again. You don't brush your teeth once and expect it to be done forever, right? Relationships are the same way. And then sincerity, focusing more on them and being interested in what they're about, but really being sincere. Dale Carnegie, I used to teach the Dale Carnegie course, and he talked about taking a sincere interest in other people. And yet when people read that, they just like pretend to be interested in what the person's talking about. It's like, no, like find something that the two of you genuinely share in common to build that relationship. And if you don't like sailing, don't talk about sailing. Find that other. That's number 1. Anyone can be intentional about building relationships before conflict happens and making that a part of our efforts, our work to reduce conflict and pay dividends. Okay. So with this slide, I was going to ask you all what sort of conflict you were up to in the world, and apologies for those who came in late. I didn't get to find out from you, but I did get to hear from the others what they're up to and the sort of conflict that they're facing. So Nicole, you had some conflict at work. Stacy, you had some conflict at work in the past, and Peter, you're worried about some issues with your clients potentially coming back. So I'm going to not spend much time on that with a focus on the clock, but I do want to share a story with you about a gentleman named Stephen Cartman. Stephen was a graduate of Duke University School of Medicine, and he ended up doing some post-grad work under this psychiatrist who was very well regarded in the field. And Stephen was interesting because in addition to working in medicine and psychiatry, he also was interested in acting and was a member of the Screen Actors Guild. And he wrote this article called Fairy Tales and Script Drama Analysis in 1968. And he was using Little Red Riding Hood to illustrate his points. But he ended up coming up with this model called the Cartman Drama Triangle. Some of you have probably heard about that. The idea is that when humans tell their stories, they tend to cast people into three different roles. One role is the victim, another is the villain or the persecutor, and the third is the hero or the rescuer. Now, when a person tells a story and they're in the story, what role do you think they typically cast themselves in?
Hero.
Yeah.
Or victim.
Yes, hero or victim. That's right. So when we tell stories in the midst of conflict, we tend to cast ourselves in the role of the hero or the victim. But then what does that make everybody else, right? The villain. Yeah. And so what ends up happening is now here I want to be in the middle, but when I'm the hero, what am I doing with the villain? What does the hero do with the villain in the movie? Fights, right? Battles them. And so here I am moving back into unhealthy conflict when I think of myself as the hero and them as the villain. Or if I cast myself in the role of the victim and them as the villain, what do I do?
Blame.
Okay, blame, but usually to myself in silence, right? Like I'm blaming them, but all up in here. And I'm like, just holding it all in, suppressing. And so here I am when I'm on that drama triangle. I am moving myself and others into unhealthy conflict. So here is the skill. So Nicole, I'm going to put you on the spot. Who's the one person, you don't have to say the name, but the one person that you really had that conflict with in that past job that you are no longer at?
Alex.
Okay, you can say it. Yeah.
Manager.
Your manager. And so Alex is the villain in the story, right? So now I would invite you to tell me two more stories about Alex, but one where she's the hero and one where she's the victim. Could you do that?
Yes. So she was very, very organized and maintained a really great, no matter how discombobulated things were, she always came across very well put together.
And that's a nice compliment, but I want you to tell me a story about how she was your hero.
Oh. Well, I thought that was something that I wanted to be more like.
You wanted to be like her. That's right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make up another one. Yeah. She was the hero because she could see that this was not the right job for you, that you had so much more that you could do in your life. And so she knew that she had to let you go or you would not reach your full potential.
Maybe.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Not saying it's true, because they're all stories, right? Now let's tell the story of where she's the victim.
Yeah. I think that there was also, she was 26, her first management job. And over there.
Yes, there you go. Now, what do you notice about your emotional reaction to Alex versus when you first said her name versus now after we've told those stories?
Yeah, so feel for her.
Okay, you have some different feelings, right? The feelings don't go away. There's still feelings there, but the intensity of the anger and I'll just say the intensity decreases, right? And so what we're doing is we're kind of hacking our own brain by not letting ourselves live on the drama triangle, and we're challenging our brain by telling a couple different stories. And that allows our body to just come back to a little bit back more to normal. And then we can go deal with the conflict a little bit more with more of our capacity. Any thoughts about that or comments? This is a really useful tool, especially like also at home, right? Because it's like, if my wife and I are in a fight, oh gosh, she's so terrible. Oh, she's so, and I'm off hiding somewhere, just running through it in my head. And so how do I stop? I can catch myself in that. And how can I tell a different story? Yeah.
I do this just driving in traffic when someone cuts me off.
That's right.
That idiot, that moron.
That's right.
Terrible driver.
Yeah.
And then I pause and I go, they might be having a really bad day.
That's right.
Like maybe someone's sick in the hospital and trying to get there and they can't even think straight.
That's right.
Like, and then all that anger and all that just goes away.
Yes.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Whatever. And
so, and in that case, the anger might go away. I think something I really want to say is I don't use this technique to try to make the feelings go away. I just want them to be mitigated enough that I don't show up saying, all right, jerk, let's figure this out, right? Because that's not going to work for anybody.
So, just for clarity's sake,
Yeah.
I heard you say that you can regulate the intensity of your feeling by doing some inside analysis on them as a victim and also seeing them as a hero, right? And then it somehow subdues, right?
Yes.
Like what happened.
That's
here.
right.
And so is that the...
Yes. Yeah, the idea here is that we take small bits of information and we make stories out of them. And the stories that we tell often cast them as villains. And so if we force ourselves to tell a couple of different stories, one where they're the hero and one where they're the victim, then it reminds us that, oh, all of them are stories. I don't actually know any of the truth, and I should go have a conversation about this. And so I'm going to go do that. And now I can do it with a little bit less intense emotion. And I might find out that they are the villain and the emotion can come back. But I don't want to start from that place. That's not good for being in healthy conflict.
What happens when you're already in your amygdala? Right. Yeah. And so it's already, it's like first you have to get out of that to do that exercise.
That's right.
Kind of,
yeah.
Right? So what do you say about
that?
that?
So what I talk about is that emotions are a wave. And oftentimes when we're ramping up on that wave, one of two things happens. Either we're afraid that it's never going to end, and so we try to put it away and then and contain it, or we loop in the story and we just kind of keep it going, but inside, and we never really resolve it, right? And so in the classes that I teach, I don't have it here today, but I talk about how do we ride the emotional wave. So if I'm really hijacked, and what are the strategies that I can do to wait until that wave kind of subsides a bit? This is one of the techniques that I would recommend, but also like move your body, get those chemicals out, grab a towel, you can bring it, name the emotion, just say, I'm angry. Don't try to make the emotion go away. So there's a number of techniques, right? But yes, ride the emotional wave, and then you could apply this technique and then go have the conversation. Once our emotions are regulated, we can then manage the conflict without escalating it or disappearing. All right. Well, I'm going to try to get through this third one, see how I do. How many of you all went to school? Certainly some conflict in the schoolyard, right? I think that there's one thing that every single one of us learned here when we went to school. And that is that having the answer is good. Mm-hmm. Having the answer got me a good grade. Having the answer got the attention from the teacher. I like this picture because the one kid who doesn't have his hand raised, the other kid's pointing at him, right? We got shamed for not having the answer, right? And so it was really important for us to have the answer. And I see this carry forward into the workplace, is that when we're faced with a problem, we want to have an answer. That's what we're getting paid for after all, right? Well, I know a few of you didn't hear the opening story of the 6 blind men and the elephant, but when the supervisor showed up and said, what should we do about the elephant? Well, how did they respond? Of course, they wanted to come up with an answer. but their answer was only based on their experience. And I'm going to argue that we're all blind to some degree. We don't have all the information all the time. And yet, when we get into a meeting and the first thing is, what should we do? Boom, the answers start flying. And then people start arguing, oh, that's a terrible idea. And so that's where a lot of conflict happens. And so the solution to that I mentioned earlier is for us to slow down on solving problems and start asking questions. And so I'm going to just share some of the negative things that I see people do in these situations, and then what can we do about it, regardless of our title. And so one of the things that we see happening in the workplace is people shitting all over each other. And that also happens outside the workplace, actually, right? With family and friends and so on, where someone comes to us with a problem and right away we want to be there with the answer. And who likes to be shit on? Here's what you should have done in that job with Alex. You should have done this. And Peter, here's what you should do, right? It's like, you don't know me, right? Yes.
I also think in this vein, we should on ourselves.
Yes, that's right. That also happens. Absolutely. Well said. Thank you, Allison. So then I think people have come to learn and discover that shitting on others and themselves in the workplace is not looked at kindly and not received very well. And so what I found is that managers and leaders have come up with a more inclusive language that I like to call we speak. So they just change it from you to we, and then it's inclusive, right? So, so yeah,
I mean, the same thing as let's, right?
Yeah, that's right. Let's do this. That's yeah, and like, who is we? Like,
you're the manager. You don't mean you're doing it.
Yeah, Stacy, we have a problem. We got a call from the customer, and they told us that we have to fix this by Monday, and so we're going to have to come in this weekend and stay late and get this done. So see you Saturday. And of course, am I showing up? I don't know. Are you showing up? I mean, who do you mean by we? It's really confusing. And then I'm probably going to stay silent in that case, but as we said, that's still unhealthy conflict. So the point here that I would like to make is that instead of us reacting like students who are trying to have the right answers, let's learn to become more like teachers and ask the right questions. So before I get to how to ask the right questions, let's talk about some of the wrong ways to ask questions. So the first one is called closed questions. A closed question is a question that only has two correct answers, yes or no. And that might sound like, so Peter, did you reach out to the legal department to find out about these laws that you're concerned about? All you could say is yes or no, right? Well, Peter, are you going to talk to an attorney to get this figured out, right? Well, yes or no. It's not really an engaging type of question. That's called a closed question. And then the next one is called leading questions. And closed questions and leading questions are very much related. I think leading questions are a kind of closed question. And so those that I just offered you were leading questions because I was offering you my solution in the question. So I'm still giving an answer because I just can't let go of being the smartest person in the room and having all the answers. So Peter, have you tried, hiring somebody who has expertise in this area, right? It's like, right? Like, can you just feel your body groan when someone does that to you, right? Yeah. Okay, so we want to be able to ask powerful questions. And those are also called open questions. And these are questions that have many correct answers, not just the one that I'm trying to steer you to. And of course, these are questions that start with who, what, where, when, how, and why. Now, the key here is that, and so let's give an example. So Peter, I might say, so Peter, how are you going to deal with this situation where this might come back on you? Yeah. And Nicole, like, what did you learn from those experiences in the workplace? And what can you carry forward to your next place? And notice how much that's a nice question. Thank you for being interested, right? Mm-hmm. But it helps bring more clarity to the situation. Like, Nicole, what do you think went wrong, right? How would you do it differently next time? These are questions we like to be asked, except that last one. Why? Because if I say, well, Peter, Why are you worried about that? Nicole, why do you keep getting let go from these jobs? Yeah, right. That's like, well, if I knew that, like right away, you feel like you're being put on the defensive and that you have to justify yourself. And so we try to avoid why questions when we ask open-ended questions and powerful questions. So it doesn't matter our level of the organization. Anyone can ask powerful questions in the midst of conflict. Like, how is this helping us solve the problem? Or where are we trying to get to again? Or what does good look like for us here? Right? Those questions can help a situation when people are arguing about which solution is the best and they've jumped to solutions too early. So I'm going to summarize and wrap up here and then answer questions. So in summary, anyone can be a leader because anyone can lead the group away from unhealthy conflict and back to healthy conflict. And I've offered you 3 kind of simple ideas here about things that you can do to help lead other people back to healthy conflict. One of those is to proactively go build relationships. The second is to tell yourself a different story or several different stories until you feel that emotional shift. And then third is spend more time understanding the problems than jumping into solutions and arguing over the solution. And then my little plug, I teach an 8-week course called the Inarguable Communication Course, which includes some of these skills, but a lot more. And that's not currently something that I offer online. It's only available in a live online format. But if that's something you're interested in, I would love to hear from you and have you reach out and chat with me about it. So thank you all for your time. All right. So with that, what questions didn't I answer about conflict?
You said 3 questions right at the end that were really nice. One was, what does good look like?
Yes.
What were the other 2?
Yeah.
I want to write these down.
I forget, but I'll tell you from a coaching perspective, my 3 favorite questions for coming into a situation, totally not knowing what's going on, is what's going well, what could be better, and what's missing or unclear. But yeah.
I remember what they were.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Where is it we were going?
Oh, where are we going? Where are we trying to get to?
Yeah, and what are we going to do about that?
Yeah, or maybe like, I think I said, how is this getting us to where we want to go? I might have said as well.
What if the other person doesn't want to engage, I guess?
Yeah. How do you know they don't want to engage? Now notice I asked an open-ended question. I didn't just jump into answering, right? So just.
I think sometimes like I want to approach the conflict and others don't want to approach the conflict. Maybe they're not, I don't know, their emotional intelligence isn't there yet. Or that's right. To them, they're still in that, I want to avoid this at all costs, and so it's like, I want to talk about this. It's like, I don't want to talk about this. So do I wait for them to be comfortable or do I just let it go? I don't know. So that's always one thing.
So I have 2 answers. In this class, I teach a technique that would sound like this. I notice I'm feeling distant. We had that argument the other day and I want to talk about it. And I heard you say that you don't want to. And the story that I'm telling myself is we can't just continue like this. What do you think about that? And that's what I would say. Now, they still might not engage.
Yeah.
Right? But then at some point, there's an impact on you and there's an impact on the relationship. And so then I would move into talking about the impact on that and say, I heard you say that you didn't want to talk to me about this, and it's really impacting my ability to be in this relationship. Story I'm telling myself is that if we don't do something about this, we're not going to be able to continue. And how do you feel about that? So I phrased it the same, I used the same formula both times, but I kind of referred 2 different things. One was about the argument and one was about the relationship. Yeah. Does that help? Yeah. So it does kind of go to what you talked about earlier about issues versus relationship. And a lot of times we start collaborating on an issue and then things devolve and the relationships start to be damaged. And when that happens, I talk about putting a pin in the issue and stepping over and like, let's focus on the relationship. We can't continue with the issue. until things are working well for us in terms of the relationship. And so in those situations, Stacy, what might have been missing was knowing when to switch over and say, oh, let's put a pause on the issue because I really care about the issue, but something's going on. Something isn't right here with our relationship. And the ability to do that really is powerful in terms of getting people back to healthy conflict. Yeah.
I was going to say that agree to disagree. And I think you just kind of maybe helped with that, but that whole like, well, let's just agree to disagree. Or like, we clearly don't see this the same way. So let's just, it's fine. And I think going back to the relationship, but if that person doesn't want to engage in the relationship back, and like we're still kind of at a step. But
that's right. Agree to disagree really only works if you don't have to work with that person forever. Right? Like,
see, that's my dad's favorite thing to talk to me. He'll be like, let's just agree to disagree. I'm like,
Well, and so then again, what I would switch to is away from the issue to the relationship and say, gosh, I notice when we can't agree on something like this, or when we see it so differently, it affects my relationship with you. What do you think about that? Go ahead.
That's kind of what I was going to say. It's like something that I've had to try to do, which is sort of like taking a higher road is like pausing what you said and saying, you know, I've really been thinking about like what is important to me in this relationship. I'd love to know like what's important to you in this relationship.
That's true.
And then, you know, or share first, right? I mean, when you go first, and then coming from that place of like real curiosity, sincere curiosity, you know.
And what I might add to that is like kind of with the like trust. What else can I learn about this person's perspective? Do I really know them? And then second, the like, where do we agree? So rather than focusing on where we disagree, where do we agree? Can we find that place together and feel good about that? So even if we agree to disagree over here, can we find that place where we agree? All right. I think I should wrap it. I'll stick around for a few minutes and answer any other questions that you may have. But thank you all so much for being here with me today. Yeah, I had a lot of fun.